Why do I like Mercenaries 2 more than the original? Just cause. I think Mercenaries 2 gets a lot of hate, not because it's a bad game, but because it's a bad sequel. So the first game is set in a fictional North Korea. You have a list of 52 bounties and a massive stockpile of guns and weapons to bring them in dead or alive. And that was what made the first game so interesting. You had airstrikes and missiles and bombs, but you made more money on bounties if you brought them in alive. So when it actually came time to bring in the bounties, you had to plan and strategize if you wanted to keep them alive. Taking out defenses, eliminating all the soldiers around them so that they were alone, so you could get in there, subdue them, and call in a helicopter to take them out of there. All of the airstrikes and bombs and missiles were kind of saved for side missions. And the mechanic was easy. Ordnance cost money. So as long as you had the money, you could just buy a missile and then drop it. But the core of the gameplay, the bounties, they reward planning and patience. But between the first and second games, something changed. The publisher. The first game was published by LucasArts, but the second one went to EA. And while Pandemic called it a natural fit, I think the results say otherwise. The second game is set in Venezuela, and everything is bigger and louder. There are more explosions, more destruction. And the Venezuelan government wasn't thrilled about that. They called the game American propaganda. They said it was psychological terror that was laying the groundwork for an actual invasion to overthrow President Hugo Chavez. And Pandemic's response was that they're just an entertainment company. The US government had nothing to do with the creation of Mercenaries 2, which sounds good, but would probably have a little more weight if Pandemic didn't work with the US military to make Full Spectrum Warrior. And the other change that happened before Mercenaries 2? Just Cause came out. Just Cause is another third-person open-world game with destructible environments and lots of explosions and grenades and bombs and vehicles. It was over-the-top action, and Mercenaries 2 is clearly inspired by it. In the sequel, you only have 3 main targets, and you can still take them in dead or alive, but they don't put up nearly as much of a fight if you try to take them in alive. And yes, that means if you want to take them in alive, you can't just drop a big missile. But every capture mission is also tied to dropping a bomb on an oil rig or nuking a big wall. And once you actually get to the targets, they don't put up much of a fight. I'm pretty sure one of them was just kind of standing there while I took him down. The game's high-value target missions are actually more like the bounties from the first game. A faction will give you targets spread all over the map, usually belonging to another faction, and they're usually positioned in some highly defended base. So if you want to take them in alive to get more money, you can't just nuke the whole place. You have to figure out an entry and exit. And taking in a high-value target from another faction will hurt your reputation with that faction. So there is some strategy to those, but they're completely optional side missions. And they also made some other completely unnecessary changes. You can now find money and ordnance just lying around the map that you can call in a helicopter to come pick up. But if you want any of the really good toys, you have to buy them in a shop. And once they're in your inventory, if you actually want to use them, you actually have to use the brand new resource, oil. And in the beginning of the game, I really didn't mind the oil resource thing. It was actually kind of interesting. Like when I had to level a castle, but I ran out of oil mid-mission, and so I had to collect oil in the middle of a firefight. But you can also do side missions that'll increase your max capacity. And at that point, it just becomes this tedious chore where you have to go around the map collecting oil before you can do any big missions. And after a while, even going around collecting money and ordnance from the map is completely pointless because I had more money than I knew what to do with. I could buy anything I want, and I had enough oil to drop missiles on every enemy I came across. It is fun, ridiculous, over-the-top action. And critics seem to agree as far as the PS3 and 360 versions went. It was a good game, it just wasn't a good sequel. People who played the first Mercenaries, expecting to pick up Mercenaries 2 and get more of the same, would be disappointed. Not because it's a bad game, but because it was such a different game. Though the PS2 version was widely hated. It had clipping, blurry cutscenes, glitches. GameSpot called it one of the worst PS2 games of all time. And it didn't help that EA took footage from the PS3 and the Xbox 360 versions and tried to play it off as the PS2 version. So clearly EA knew how bad of a game it was. But EA had some terrible marketing for this game anyway. They took over a gas station in London, decked it out with Mercenaries 2 ads, dressed people up like soldiers, and gave away free gas. But it caused such havoc and congestion on the roads that Parliament member Lynn Featherstone actually asked them for an apology. which kind of set the stage for Mercenaries 2 not selling as well as EA had wanted and eventually shutting down Pandemic Studios. But that'll be a story for another video. Mercenaries 2 would have been a great standalone game, a new IP, because the first game was strategic, it was methodical, it had all the big explosions, but those weren't the focus, they were just a side mission. The second game was all about spectacle. It brought all of the destruction and explosions front and center. Neither one is a bad game, they are just very different games. So if you're looking for a game where you have a list of targets in a big open world with a ton of weapons, and you have to plan and strategize a way to take them all down, play Mercenaries 1. And if you want to drop a nuke on a skyscraper, play Mercenaries 2. See you next time.